All right. First series, we are going to preview the Florida Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Florida Panthers are coming in at minus 175 favorites to win the series. Lightning are coming in at plus 145 underdogs. All odds that will be read on this podcast are coming from FanDuel, so don't ask me. Season series, Florida wins the season series 2-1. This series is going to be a doozy. Before I go into all the analytics and bullshit that people just love to hear, first impressions, first thoughts from you two.
This is going 7.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be shocked
Yeah.
if each of these games went to overtime.
Yeah, I was gonna another thing just to keep in mind. I would save it to the end, but I think it's better to just keep in mind as we go through all this. I'm curious what you guys think. Which series will have the most OT games, and which series will be like the most amount of like not close games or whatever. This is definitely on my radar for most OT games. What comes to mind here, honestly, and maybe this is just recency bias because everyone's talking about it right now, but it's tough to bet against the team that has what will probably be the MVP.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. I know. Well, I mean, when you look at it, there's some stats that are on our outline here that are a little concerning for one of the teams rather. The Panthers, they are a defensive dynamo. They allowed the fewest goals per game in the NHL this season. That's a huge strength for them. And they also had the sixth best penalty kill in the league based on percentage. They actually killed the most penalties in the league this year, killing 240. You flip to the other side and you go with the Bolts. They have an absolutely lethal power play, best in the NHL this season at 28.5%. And they also have a good penalty kill, fifth best in the NHL. The part that I'm concerned about if I'm a Panthers fan is you got the number one power play in the NHL with the guy who has the most power play points in the NHL, and you take the most penalties in the NHL. So I'm kind of going to narrow it down to like, can the Cats stay out of the box?
There's things that are in your control in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and there's things that are just not. We've seen it with puck luck, we've seen it with bounces, which have affected teams every which way. The number one thing you can do that you can control is stay the fuck out of the box. That's what the Cats need to do.
Very true. I also think worth mentioning sometimes when you look at like what teams lead the league in penalty minutes, you got to factor in there's fights and stuff too. So
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily mean that they're like taking the most 2 minute minors or whatever, but
yeah, for
yeah, it
sure.
definitely doesn't bode well. I don't know. I'll say my prediction. Let's keep running through it.
I mean, if you look on paper, I think it would be generally agreed on that the Bolts are not as deep this year as they have been in years prior, where they make some seriously deep runs. Obviously, they have their big five on the power play, and they are all absolutely incredible. But after that, it's lacking a little bit of depth in their bottom six, I would say. I think Florida probably has the deeper team, top to bottom, and just the storylines coming into this. The Lightning have owned the Panthers in the playoffs. They beat them in 2021 and 2022. In 2021, they won in six. And then we all remember the shocker in 2022 when Tampa swept them. And then Huberdeau ended up getting shipped out as a result of that. And there's just one other really good storyline here. We already mentioned the power play, but Cooch leads the NHL in power play points. Sam Reinhart leads the NHL in power play goals. I have a feeling special teams is going to play a huge, huge role in this series.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the narrative. And then, sort of in association with that, that goaltending becomes a narrative. I think when you look at the two goaltenders in this series, it pretty much writes itself. I totally agree with what you said about Tampa not being deep as deep as they used to be. They're still absolutely the Tampa Bay Lightning, but this is not the Tampa Bay Lightning from 21 or 22 by any means.
Little battle of Moscow between the pipes for these two teams. And it's like both goalies, right? I mean, Vasi, obviously, everyone knows how good he can be in the playoffs and how good he's been historically. By his standards, maybe not his best season this year, but if he can flip that switch, we all know how that goes. And then Bobrovsky last year when they made the cup run was incredible, but he also can be sometimes iffy, I would say. I don't know. Mac, what are your thoughts?
It's also interesting because I think you could say both teams don't really have another guy to turn to. It's kind of starting goalie or bust. There's no like, well, you know, we
It's
got
the
this other
devil
guy.
system. It's Marty Brodeur, and then we're fucked.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's no, that's no stab at the other guys. The other thing is they just don't play a whole lot. So it's hard to jump in if you have to in a situation like that. So I don't know. I think Vasi has looked a lot better to me in the last like 2 to 3 weeks. It seems like he's kind of getting hot at the right time.
Yeah.
So I think maybe there's a slight edge for Tampa right now in goal.
The other thing to remember about Vasi is he's played like 2 less months than everyone else in the league right now. So that adds up. We know that. We've seen
Good
that with
point.
him, you know, in playoff runs. What was it, like 18, 19, where he just ran out of steam? That matters. It absolutely matters, especially when you've had really short off seasons like this team has had for the past 4 or 5 years.
So after we pitter patter around with all the fun stuff that people like to dissect, I would like to hear your formal prediction and why. And before you guys say that, I want everyone listening to know that before we all recorded, we asked each other, do you know who you're picking? And we all said, nope, not yet. So this should be a gut reaction on the spot. Nick, I'm going to start you off.
Bolts in 7.
Ooh. Okay. Why?
I've said this like a couple times over the past like year and a half on this show, I think, but it's the Patriots theory. They're going to be good until they're not. And yeah, Florida's great and they had a great year, but this is the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's a John Cooper coach team. Nikita Kucherov had the best season of his career somehow in the most quiet fashion possible. And he's going to win the MVP. And if he doesn't, it's a crime. But I got to go with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And that's no disrespect to the Florida Panthers, but that's just my gut feeling right now.
Mac, what are we thinking?
Meow, meow, cats in 7.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. I like that. Oh God.
I almost I made up my mind before Nick said anything, but then with everything Nick just said, he almost flipped me back to the other side though. God, this is such a hard one, but I'll stick with it. Cats in 7.
I think this is the hardest. Nah, maybe ball. No, I think this
We're
is the
going to say
hardest
that
series.
like 3 more times this episode, though.
I think this is the hardest series to predict. I've swayed back and forth so many times on this, but my brain says Florida, my gut says Tampa, so I'm gonna follow my gut because it never steers you wrong. I'm gonna go Tampa in. I'm gonna go Tampa in 6. I think on home ice they close it out.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go Tampa in 6. Probably gonna eat my words, but I think plus 145 is a very good price for, like Nick said, a John Cooper coach team.
I
Are
mean,
the
yeah,
Bolts?
that's a great play.
I'm gonna go Bolts in 6. That's gonna be a hell of a series, though. I can't lie. I think I also made a prediction earlier in the February. I was like, the Bolts are going deep, and Duclair, my guy to watch. I think there's a lot of props to be won there.